What if one of the most watched royal weddings in history wasn't the fairy tale it seemed? What if the romance between a princess and her handsome captain was just the beginning of a scandalous saga? On November 14th, 1973, Princess Anne, Queen Elizabeth II's only daughter, married Captain Mark Phillips in a globally televised spectacle. An estimated 500 million people tuned in, believing they were witnessing a modern-day fairy tale. But behind all the pomp and pageantry, a completely different story was unfolding, one of hidden turmoil, shocking affairs, and a divorce that would shake the British monarchy. This is the real story of a royal wedding with a twist. To understand how it all went wrong, you first have to understand who they were. Princess and Elizabeth Alice Louise, born in 1950, was never going to be a passive princess. Famously no-nonsense, fiercely independent, and armed with a sharp wit, she carved her own path from a young age. Her real passion wasn't in palaces, but in the saddle. She became a world-class equestrian, and in 1971, her incredible talent won her the title of European Eventing Champion and the BBC Sports Personality of the Year award. Her future husband, Captain Mark Phillips, shared that passion. A skilled horseman and a respected British Army officer, he was also an Olympian, having won a team gold medal with the British equestrian team at the 1972 Munich Games. It was their shared love for horses that brought them together. They first met at a party for horse lovers in 1968, a fitting start for a relationship built on common ground. For 5 years, their romance grew mostly out of the public eye. They were two people united by a deep understanding of the discipline their sport required. So when their engagement was announced on May 29, 1973, the public was enthralled. Here was a princess marrying a commoner, an English hero, a dashing officer, and a fellow athlete. It felt modern and refreshingly real. The stage was set for a wedding that would capture the world's imagination. But as we're about to find out, the spectacle masked a very different reality. The wedding day, November 14, 1973, was declared a special bank holiday in the UK. And as a fun coincidence, it also happened to be Prince Charles's 25th birthday. London was electric. Tens of thousands of people lined the streets, waving flags and hoping for a glimpse of the couple as Princess Anne rode from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey in the glass state coach. Inside, around 2,000 guests, including European royalty, waited for the bride. The ceremony was steeped in tradition. Anne walked down the aisle on the arm of her father, Prince Philip. She wore a Tudor-style dress with a high collar and medieval-inspired sleeves, a design she personally had a hand in creating. On her head, she wore the Queen Mary fringe tiara, the very same one her mother, Queen Elizabeth II, wore on her wedding day, a powerful symbol of royal continuity. Captain Phillips stood at the altar in the full uniform of his regiment, the 1st, the Queen's Dragoon Guards. Following the traditional Anglican service, Anne bowed to obey her husband, and they exchanged rings. Anne's ring was crafted from the same nugget of Welsh gold used for the wedding bands of her mother, grandmother, and aunt, another unbroken link in the chain of royal history. After the vows, the newlyweds emerged to the roar of the crowd and shared an iconic public kiss on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. The celebration continued with a wedding breakfast, featuring a wedding cake made to be the exact same height as the 5'6" princess herself. The couple then sailed off on a Caribbean honeymoon aboard the royal yacht Britannia. It was a day that had it all: a beautiful princess, a handsome soldier, and all the pomp the British monarchy could offer. The global TV audience, estimated at a staggering 500 million, saw a fairy tale come to life. It really seemed like a perfect day. But perfection, especially under the glare of the public eye, can be a fragile thing. In the beginning, life for Anne and Mark seemed to continue the fairy tale. The Queen bought them Gatcombe Park, a country estate in Gloucestershire, where they could indulge their shared passion for horses. Their family soon grew with the birth of their son, Peter, in 1977, and their daughter, Zara, in 1981. In a move that was highly unusual at the time, Anne and Mark declined the Queen's offer of titles for their children. This was a deliberate choice, driven by their desire to give Peter and Zara a more normal life. It was a clear sign of Anne's famously practical and forward-thinking nature. On the surface, They were a modern royal couple. Both continued to compete in equestrian sports at the highest level. In 1976, Princess Anne became the first member of the immediate British royal family to compete in the Olympic Games, riding the Queen's horse, Goodwill, in Montreal. Mark Phillips also continued his successful career, winning a team silver medal with the British equestrian team at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. But behind this united front, cracks were starting to show. As the years went on, reports began to surface of a growing distance between them. Their personalities, once complementary, now seemed to clash. Anne was the hard-working senior royal with a packed schedule of duties, while Mark was often away, focusing on his own equestrian career and business ventures. The press began to pick up on their frequent separations, noting they would often travel in different cars and stay in different hotels. The passion that brought them together was no longer enough to bridge the gap. Insiders described the marriage as having become loveless, and the stage was set for a scandal that would expose the painful reality behind palace walls. The facade of a happy marriage finally shattered in the mid-1980s. First and most damaging bombshell involved Captain Mark Phillips. In 1985, he had a one-night stand with a New Zealand art teacher named Heather Tonkin, resulting in the birth of a daughter, Felicity, later that year. For years, Phillips denied he was the father. Though he made regular payments to Tonkin disguised as fees for equestrian consultancy, he reportedly pressured her to have an abortion, refused to have his name put on the birth certificate. The secret held for 6 years, but in 1991, Heather Tonkin went public, initiating a paternity suit. A court-ordered DNA test confirmed that Mark Phillips was the father. The news was a bombshell, a deep personal betrayal that became a public humiliation for Princess Anne and the royal family. For Anne, this was reportedly the final straw. But the story didn't end there. In 1989, the British tabloid The Sun got a hold of personal letters that had been stolen from the princess. The leak forced Buckingham Palace to issue an extraordinary statement confirming the letters were from Commander Timothy Lawrence, an equerry to the Queen. Lawrence, a respected Royal Navy officer, had developed a close friendship with the princess that had blossomed into a discreet romance. While the letters' contents were never published, their existence confirmed that Anne had found companionship outside her failing marriage. With a confirmed love child and stolen love letters now public knowledge, there was no way to pretend anymore. On August 31, 1989, Buckingham Palace announced that Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips were separating. The statement carefully noted there were no plans for divorce, but the damage was done. The separation was just a prelude to the inevitable. The divorce and its surprising aftermath were just around the corner. But first, take a moment to comment below. Were you aware of the scandals that plagued this marriage? What are your thoughts on the pressures faced by royal couples? Let us know, and let's continue the conversation. The separation in 1989 marked the beginning of the end. For the next 2.5 years, Anne and Mark lived separate lives. The final chapter came during the Queen's annus horribilis, or horrible year of 1992. In April of that year, Princess Anne filed for an uncontested divorce. After years of turmoil and scandal, the official end of their 80-year marriage took less than 5 minutes in court. For Princess Anne, a new beginning came swiftly. Just months later, on December 12, 1992, she married Commander Timothy Lawrence. They wed in a small, private ceremony at Crathie Kirk, the church near Balmoral Castle in Scotland, as the Church of England at the time did not permit remarriage after divorce. Attended by only about 30 guests, the quiet event was a world away from the global spectacle of her first wedding. Mark Phillips also moved on. In 1997, he married Sandy Pfluger, an American Olympic equestrian. They had a daughter, Stephanie, that same year. However, this marriage also ended in divorce in 2012, reportedly due to Phillips's infidelity. Despite the messy end to their marriage, Anne and Mark managed to build a surprisingly friendly co-parenting relationship. They continued to live near each other at Gatcombe Park and were often seen together at equestrian events, supporting their children's own successful riding careers. This amicable front was crucial, allowing Peter and Zara to thrive outside the shadow of their parents' public split. The story of Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips is a saga of a public fairy tale and a private reality. Their 1973 wedding was a landmark media event that, for millions, represented the perfect union of royalty and relatability. But behind the scenes, it became a cautionary tale about the immense pressures of royal life and the painful consequences of infidelity. The divorce, once almost unthinkable for a senior royal, was a turning point for the monarchy. It was part of a wave of marital breakdowns in the 90s that forced the institution to confront the modern realities of relationships. Anne's swift, quiet remarriage to Timothy Lawrence also set a new precedent, showing a determination to find personal happiness on her own terms. Perhaps the true legacy of their union is their children. By choosing to forgo royal titles, Anne and Mar gave Peter and Zara a level of freedom that has allowed them to build their own lives. Zara, in particular, followed in her parents' footsteps to become a world-class equestrian, winning a silver medal at the 2012 London Olympics. In a poignant full-circle moment, that medal was presented to her by her own mother. The marriage of Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips is a powerful reminder that even in a gilded cage, human relationships are complex and fragile. The grand wedding wasn't the end of the fairy tale, but the start of a difficult journey that ultimately led them down very different paths.